Hi, I'm Janet Baker, and on behalf of Paper Tiger, we want to thank you for attending the webinar today. Ann McGurty, CEO of Strategize and Organize. She's a professional speaker, productivity expert, and author, as well as Paper Tiger expert, will be presenting today. If you want to learn more about Ann and her services, please visit strategizeandorganize.com. She may be in Colorado, but she's nationally recognized as an expert and works with people throughout the United States in person and virtually. On today's webinar, Ann will start by covering the initial setup with a fairly quick overview. Then she will move on to what Ann calls a reality webinar based on real questions from our audience. Just to let you know, there is a chat section in the lower right corner of your screen where you can submit questions. I will be helping Ann watch out for those, and we will try our best to answer all questions during the call. Please note that there is a drop-down box for who you send your questions to, either to all attendees or to the presenters. Whichever you prefer is good. Ann will stop her presentation about 20 minutes till and open up to answer some of those chats. Anything not answered on today's call, we will answer you back directly as soon as possible, and also cover the issues on an upcoming webinar. We will also be posting the questions and answers on our blog. Just to remind you, all attendees for today's webinar will be entered into Paper Tiger's Apple iPad contest ending March 31st. And Ann has graciously offered 30 free minutes over the phone for anyone interested in more professional one-on-one assistance. And again, we want to make our webinars as fun and flexible as possible, so feel free to let us know what you want to learn about for future webinars. Now, to get on with the best part, I'll turn the call over to Ann.
Well, hi, thank you, Janet, and thank you everyone who is attending our call today. We have a great audience, and our experience has been that what you really enjoy the most is to hear about how other people are using the Paper Tiger software. So I am going to open up an account that we have right now in our database called the sample. And what we have here is what happens when you open up the dashboard for the Paper Tiger. As Janet had just mentioned, you can go ahead and ask questions and type them in, but we can also ask for them later on. Based on what I've heard from other people, one of the questions that was asked was, do you consider each closet, drawer, or filing cabinet as a new location? And I say, yes, we do, assuming that they have different functions. So let's go into locations, and we are in the location area right now. And we are going to create a new location. So if, for example, you have a 4-drawer vertical filing cabinet, and it's all general reference, I would create a new location, and we would call this location reference. In the description of the wizard, I would define it as the 4-drawer vertical filing cabinet. Oops. Sorry for the typos. And then when you're setting it up, think about how many files are in the drawer or the location. It may not always be a drawer. It may be a location. So here what we're going to do is we're going to put in a capacity of 50 items and then add this location. We have now set up a location for reference, which is defining the function of files as reference files. Now, alternately, going back to the question, do you consider each closet, drawer, or filing cabinet as a new location? If the top 2 drawers of this 4-drawer vertical filing cabinet was for a different function than the bottom 2 drawers. I would create 2 separate locations. So here we have a new location for the 4-drawer filing cabinet. We set up a new location. And call it reference. I'm going to call it reference A because we had a reference location previously. And I would use a description, and we would define it. Sorry, it's taken a minute here on my connection. My mouse is showing, but I'm not showing my typing. Okay, it's the top 2 drawers of the 4-drawer vertical filing cabinet. And this may only be 25 items. So in this area here, we're going to indicate that it's 25 items because it's only 2 drawers. I've typed in 25, so I'm just waiting for our server to show that number. And then we're going to add this location.
Oh, shoot.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, 25. Sorry this is taking a minute, but I am adding the number 25 there. I'm just not seeing it. Oh, there we go. Okay, so 25, and then I'm adding that location. So that answers the question of, do you consider each drawer and filing cabinet as a new location? All right, another question was action files. Action files in the right drawer of my desk, is that considered one location? I want to go over the methodology of the paper tiger with that question. The methodology of paper tiger is to keep things very simple. And what we'd like to do is have you keep it simple by looking at actions for your current and ongoing projects. And in this case, as the person asked, we call that the action files. And these, yes, most likely would be the right drawer in my desk. And ideally, ergonomically, if you are right-handed, that's the best place to put your action files. If you are left-handed, go ahead and put it behind you, excuse me, to the left of you. And if you're limited for space, you may even put it on top of your desk in a desktop file or behind you in a credenza. And most people usually have about 20 or 25 action files. We're going to add this location. And now you have a drawer, a location that is set up for your current projects or ongoing projects. Action files are usually projects that will come to an end. All right, the next question is, I have one filing cabinet for corporate documents. So what would you do with that? Again, if it's not considered reference, and since somebody is asking specifically that it's really just corporate documents, and they want to separate it as a new location, go ahead and call them corporate documents. Now, I want you to keep in mind that when you are setting up a new location, this name is going to be what is printed on the file tabs for that location. So let me explain to you what I mean by that. We now added a file drawer for corporate documents. You see it right here as listed location. With the paper tiger, we can now, we just opened up that drawer, but we can now print tabs and labels so that you are prepared to have an organized drawer to set your new file papers in there. You will be selected to use a file folder label relative to, or that corresponds to the Avery file folder labels. Self-cut tabs are part of the trial edition, and you can use just plain blank paper to print those files, file labels. So I'm going to choose that. I'm going to choose the location of corporate documents. Well, the Paper Tiger is triggering that this name is too long. So you may want to use an abbreviated name for that file tabs. So we're going to call them corporate docs. All right, I'm going to go ahead and we would like to set up this drawer and print all of the file numbers, which will be corporate docs 1 through 25. You're going to generate tabs using a PDF file. The Paper Tiger will pop up a preview of that form, of what that would look like, and literally you can print this out on just a piece of plain white paper. And the heavier bond paper that you use, or if you have some cardboard bond that goes through your printer, I recommend using it. And then you can cut, fold it, and these tabs will easily fit into a plastic hanging file tab that goes into your Pentaflex hanging file folder. Okay, now as you can see, we did all 25 of them here. I'm going to X out of my file tabs. And where I'm going to go now depending on your internet connection, depends on how easily it is for you to maneuver through this. I think sometimes when you're on a webinar like this, it tends to be a little bit slower. So I apologize that it may be a little slower in maneuvering through the program. It's actually pretty darn speedy. But with our 100 people on here, it might slow down. Okay. I'm trying to get back to that tab here now that I've done the labels. All right, I'm being patient here. All right. I know you can't see it, but the theory also is when you were printing those labels, say for instance, we used the example of corporate docs, and we had a location capacity of 25. Well, a year from now, you realize you're going public, and you are now have due diligence, and you're going to have 150 files. So you need to go into the location and edit the capacity to 150, and then you can go back, and when you print the labels, you can print 26 through 150 and not be redundant on printing what we have already printed with other labels. I'm sorry, I'm really kind of stuck here on this label section. I'm wondering, Janet, I'm going to change it back to you as a presenter and see if you can unstick it. Trying again. All right. Hopefully Janet could be able to show you her screen there. All right. Am I back? Janet, are you there? If you are, the screen looks better.
Yeah, can you see it now, Anne? Can you see the screen?
I can see the screen that we're at the dashboard.
Yes.
We're at the dashboard. Okay. All right. So let's stretch that so we can see that whole screen, and I'll get back in shape here looking at this sample test. All right, thanks everybody for being patient here. All right, we're back. Okay, thank you. All right, I've got a mini screen, but I have a screen. All right, so what we did here is we were talking about the corporate docs, and I was showing the labels. And as I said, it may be a point later down the line where what you want to do is update the corporate documents and identify that there's more than 25 locations, items that go in there. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back to the location area, and you are going to edit that area. What I've done is I've hit edit here. I'm waiting for that to pop up. And what I'm going to do is now we would change the location capacity from 25 to 150. Save changes, and now you have the additional 125 item names for creating new labels. Since we had a little snafu there with the report on printing the labels, I'm not going to go back and repeat that, okay? All right, I had another question about, I have 3 file cabinets that are for reference documents in the paper tiger. So say, for instance, this file cabinet here of reference is actually 3, whoops, I don't know what happened there. Okay, this reference drawer here is actually 3 cabinets. Well, in the description when I set it up, for the one we used for the other example, we refer to it as the 4-drawer vertical filing cabinet. And if you have multiple cabinets that have one function, what you would do is make that note within the description when you're setting up that file drawer. So reference, instead of saying 4-drawer vertical filing cabinet, would now say reference files, the 4 vanilla covered filing cabinets in the hall between executive's office and financial offices. This is waiting to pop up the screen as I was going to reference that and edit that file. So that's how you would indicate multiple cabinets. You do not have to create new locations, but just make it clear in your description how those cabinets are being used and where they may be. Another question that came up, okay, here we go. Let me show you again if this popped up. All right, so the reference, as I mentioned, the 4-drawer filing cabinet, that would be for that one, or we can change that description and say the row okay, the row of filing cabinet between finance and executive offices. And the capacity you might want to change, that it's 1,000. There's a 1,000 files in there. And then you can start adding all your files based on that. And later down the line, though, when you're getting organized for setting up your system, it may be the row of filing cabinets, but you may want to take a little file labeler and identify reference 1 through 65, or then reference 66 through 100, and label each of the drawers if it makes sense for you, and keeping in mind that you don't want to keep changing numbers and how it was identified. But that might help you a little bit later. I did that with an attorney's office, and they had so many case files that one drawer, I think there was 40 drawers, and one drawer may have only been case 1 through 6, and the next drawer would have been case 7, and the next drawer was case 8 through 42. So to keep people clear in directing them to where to find files, the next step deeper with your paper tiger would be how you label the actual drawers. I had a really interesting question here, that a client had a fireproof cabinet with 4 drawers. So how would you use something like that? Well, what I would do there is you may want to consider the case. I would set it up as maybe, let me think for a second. In this case, I would set up 4 locations. So they said they have a fireproof cabinet, and in that was personal documents. And in the description, I would say that the top drawer of fireproof cabinet, and the capacity may just be 10. There's not an organized system for how those drawers are organized. So just think about the amount of items that you will put in that drawer and use that as your capacity. Everything doesn't have to look like a file cabinet. So the key here is that when you're using any kind of location, what you want to do is identify how you are using it and where it is so that people can be guided on how to use that drawer. I'm going to go into a little detail here, and let's go open up the personal documents file drawer. And again, I'm using the word file drawer because that's how my mind thinks, and yours will too. And what we're going to do is we're going to start adding materials to the personal documents. What I went in and did is I added a new item name. And the first thing I can think of to put into that fire safe drawer is a birth certificate. Keyword, it may be Anne. And since it's just me, single, that might be just my birth certificate. If it was somebody, if I had a husband, maybe Tom. If I had kids, Susie and Billy. All right. And what I would do is I would add that to my personal documents. And you'll see that it was added as item number 1. It doesn't necessarily have to be an envelope or a file called 1, but it's just you know that there's 1 item in that personal documents area. As you can see, I did something different there. What I just did is I went to the left of that number and I added new because it's a new file drawer and I'm adding new materials. The next item I want to put in there is my passport. And the keyword is probably nothing in particular because it's pretty self-explanatory. But what is important is the action date for my passport might be that in March 2012, my passport is expiring. So what I want to do is consider that maybe in August or September, I want to put an action date of September. And what I would like to do is upon action date, submit information to renew passport. Now with the Paper Tiger system, what's going to happen is there will be a pop-up screen every morning or every time you open up the Paper Tiger, and any reminders that you have within a certain horizon that you decline, and it is defaulted at 7 days, will pop up. So on August 25th, I'll be getting a pop-up around August 25th and say action date 9/1 passport. I will go and open up that file and see I need to submit information to renew my passport. So it's organizing how to use your files. You could also use that action date as a time to say we're going to purge that file at that time. This may be a document that is has an expiration date in it, and it is no longer necessary for you to hang on to it. A good example of that might be, let's add a new, and you may have your tax return for, this is 2011, let's say you have 2001 in there. That's 10 years old. Chances are you're not going to need that anymore. So the action date on that was going to be 12/31/2009. I think it's 7 or 8 years. And you'll know that you can terminate it. Excuse me. All action dates must be in the future. Oh, see, I'm thinking way back. So you were just setting it up, and you want to review it one more time. So say, let's 12/31/2011. And at the end of the year, you're going to know to purge, shred information no longer required by IRS. And if you're not sure, double check with accountant. So you can use your program to direct future activities, and also to give you a reminder of things that you were thinking of at the time of the filing project and may not necessarily remember going forward. All action dates must be in the future. We've acknowledged that. We want to add that to personal documents. Okay, so I just added a couple of items into into the personal documents. It's been a good day. I've been busy filing away into my Paper Tiger. So what I would like to do next is I would like to acknowledge that it's been a good day, it's been successful, and all this material is very helpful. And I would like to have a physical report of everything that is filed within my new system here. We just did something very simple in the personal documents file. So what I want to do is get an item list of everything that is in the personal documents vault. So I ran a report, and what I now have is a physical PDF list of everything that is in the personal documents file. And then what I can do is go ahead and print this, and I can, number one, I can print all of my item list reports and put them in a safe file-proof area. Or what I recommend to clients is in the front of every drawer, or taped to a box, or put into some other safe area, this list of what is inventoried in that location for each location that you have within the Paper Tiger. All right, so that's the items list report. If you are a very active person and have a lot of action dates that you are using to manage your projects with the Paper Tiger, for instance, you have a project drawer with multiple projects, because you have multiple people on the network using your PaperTiger system, you can generate an action date report which would list all of your files that are triggered by an action date, so you can maybe incorporate over here what kind of future projects that you may have based on your files. And I'll use again the example that I had of the attorney, that they may have certain trial dates coming up, and they may indicate that this trial's in September, this one's in October, and another one is in 2012. That might be an action date for court dates. So you have a way to manage your different projects. Again, while we're on the topic of reports, personally, I really love the reporting with PaperTiger. What happens is it's like any business. If you don't know what information you have and you can't manage the information, what value really is there to having all this information? I relate it to the days that I used to be in the jewelry business. In the jewelry business, you have an inventory report. If you don't document all of the merchandise in an inventory when you receive it, then you don't know what you have. And when a customer walks into your store and says, I would like a 16-inch gold chain necklace, you can look frantically all over the place, just like you're looking frantically for a file. But if you had an inventory, you would know that all those gold chain necklaces were in the location safe, or the location front display case. So the PaperTiger is very similar. You would look for something and say, oh, that's where it is. Another report that I use frequently is the clean out report. This is something that I use often with clients at the end of the year, or intermittently, if I haven't seen them in a while, we'll say, Ann, let's go over our, let's do a year-end clean out. So what we'll do is we'll file a clean out, we'll pull a clean out report of each location, and you can see that it lists again all of your item names and items that are in that location, but it's a little bit more comprehensive because I can work with a client, or I can work by myself and make a decision that we're going to keep the birth certificate. We're not going to do anything with that. So I would check the block box that says none. And the passport, well, say for instance, it was expired and I'm not planning on ever traveling again, I can hit toss. I can click it on this area. And then tax return 2001, I know it's now outdated. And in the transfer area, you can handwrite shred. When you use the file cleanout report like this, you can make a focused decision by referring to a report on how to handle your files and how to manage them and move them forward. I use the example of a client I worked with, again, a law firm, and they had 12 attorneys, and we had listed the whole 20 drawers of files. And what we did is we passed a file cleanout report to all the attorneys with the name of each case. All the keywords were in there, and we got their individual input on what they wanted us to do with those folders, those files. It was a 3-week process getting all those busy attorneys to review this report. It took 3 weeks, but at the end of 3 weeks, we could delegate the organization of tossing those files or transferring them to archive or leaving them alone based on the input from the attorneys. With the PaperTiger, now that we have this list of how you handled that, we then saved this report as part of the historical documentation of the legal operational processes. So there's There's all kinds of little odd benefits that, you kind of always wonder, who was it that was handling the management of those files in the past? So the report functionality, I think, is a true business tool to help you be as efficient and oftentimes compliant to how you're managing your files. All right, so I'm going to go back to the browser and look at some other questions that we might have. Actually, I'm going to jump to something different. We're going to go back to the browser. We're getting there. Okay, so we're in the browser. There's so many things that we can address, and I'm looking at your questions here. All right, so we have, we're in our reference file. I'm going to open up the reference file drawer, and in the reference file drawer, we're going to create a new file. We're in this new file, and what we set up here is we have health records, and we're going to have it for AMM, which might be me. I'm not going to indicate any other information, maybe except that it was for 2010. I want to add it to reference 1. And that item is now going to be added to my reference 1 location. The point that I want to establish here is that once you set up files, and mind you, we have 1,000 that we can use in this reference file drawer. When you are setting up your filing system, a lot of times it's very helpful just to wing through the drawer, go through it, work with an assistant, hire an organizer, go through it, and list every single file that is in that drawer, as haphazard as it may be. File number 2 might be your auto. So you go ahead and you put auto in there. The next one may be, so we would go in auto. Now keep in mind, though, that other people may say, where's the vehicle? Where's the Ford Explorer? Where is the, in Denver, it's John Elway, Elway dealerships. I think they changed it to Go. I don't know why Go, because I always think get organized with Go. So we add that file name to reference number 2. And then say, for instance, we did 600 different files. And at the end of the day, we went back and we did the file report, the item list, or a file clean out, because we realized we don't really like how that's all organized. And what we might want to do is say, I want to take that 8 health records for me. I want to edit it. And I want to add in there and say personal statistics that I want to lock up, and I want to put those into my safe. So what we would do is we would highlight that item. We're going to select it here. See how I selected that item? And we're going to transfer it. And what I'm going to do is I am going to move it. And I'm going to move it to a new destination. And since we have that personal documents, I think it's more appropriate that we move that item to personal documents. The Paper Tiger will ask, should we remind you to move this item by requiring a confirmation? And what that means is, if you are in the process of physically doing all this right now and you're going to take it out of reference 1 and move it over to the file personal fireproof cabinet. And right now, no, I'll remember that that's what I'm doing right now. If you're really busy and you might get interrupted, you might say, yes, remind me later. This is where I want to move it. And after I process everything in this drawer, then I want to go back and see those that I have transferred out pending, which you'll see here under the status. In the toolbar at the top, what's going to happen is you have a confirmation button. Right here, you're going to click on confirmation, and you are going to get a wizard of everything that is pending to be transferred. So you could go through the process of making a decision, inputting what you're going to do with each of those records, and now you can delegate all of your files to someone and say, they'll see health records AMM from reference 1 needs to be moved over to personal documents number 4. This is when we physically did it. Your assistant will go ahead and take care of that. When they physically do it, they are going to click the button there where I just clicked it and hit confirm. And physically and electronically, we have confirmed that we have moved those records from reference to the personal documents. So these are just a couple of questions. I have 3 pages of questions, and I've probably only answered about 6 of them. So there are many, many ways to use the program here. And what I'm going to do now is open it up to questions to see if what everyone out there has. Okay, so we can open it up to questions. And I see that I have one. If you are a caller and you would like to present a question, go to the question area to the right of your screen and input a question. One person here says, I already use my own index filing system using folders and subfolders I have created and numbered in Windows Explorer. May I dictate the paper tiger my own indexing data so that both systems match? Based on that question, I kind of think so, because if you're looking at your Windows Explorer and you have a location which might be on my hard drive, I might have a location which is called under my documents, my clients. And if I would have a file drawer that matched some of my electronic ones, I would say that I would describe where my client drawer is and say my clients are in the bottom 2 drawer lateral in Credenza, if that makes sense. And I would add in the capacity that there's 35, and then I would add this location. And I would work with an assistant here, and what I would do is then just go through and look at the printout of what's on your file index on your hard drive, and go ahead and edit and add in all of those client names. Okay, do we have any other questions? Gosh, a quiet group today. I only have that one question. All right, would anybody like to add any other questions?
Anne, can you cover a little bit about categories?
On categories, sure, I will. Okay, so let's use categories. We'll use the example of my clients. All right, and in my business, this is a fun one because, okay, let's add new. And I might have a client of, let's say, Janet Baker. And Janet Baker is the name of my client. I don't know why I couldn't say your last name. Janet Baker is my client. Keywords, nothing necessarily, or I could say a keyword might be the Monticello Company. Another keyword might be the paper tiger. So these are keywords of what I might be looking for finding Janet. Now what I would do is I'd like to add a new category that she is a webinar attendee. And then add to my clients. Another way, as I'm saying this, that's actually a really great question, Janet, because later down the line, I may have training materials in my reference files, and I could use the category webinar as part of my categories, and then every file related to webinars could be pulled up as a report later down the line. So we could say webinar attendee, and you're in there. We could do another one to say, for instance, we could have Jim Grady, the owner of the Paper Tiger and the Monticello Company, and as a keyword category, I could add new category that he would be. I might want to add him to consulting because I would like to consult with him on business processes, and add to him as client number 2. As I just said, one of the ways to cross-use these different categories is if, for instance, in my reference file drawer, I have forms. And in my forms, I have a new client intake form. And one of the categories would be consulting. It would be really easy to cross-check with the Paper Tiger wanting to know where that form is. So with that idea, I'm going to go to my locations. I'm going to go to reference. Actually, what I did there is I was editing the location, and that's not correct. So I'm just going to go ahead and close out of that. I'm going to open the drawer by clicking on the word reference. I'm going to add a new file. And notice that we deleted reference 1, so it used the next sequential number. And I am going to put in there, I'm going to use the word client intake, forms, and I'm going to select a category for consulting and add it to my reference number 1. So later down the line, what you might be looking for is anything related to consulting. And this is, I'm not sure if I'm doing this, will it be looking for the category? Oops, helps when you type it right. Sorry. You never know, I was in New Jersey spelling bee in 6th grade. I can spell, but my typing sometimes gets thrown off. Okay, it did not look for the category consulting in the keyword search. So what I would do is you would have to go to reports, and, well, you know what, the old version had a category report. So, Janet, I think this is something we might want to look at, is how are we going to find the value of using that function. So what I might do is, another area is if you have clients, again, we'll open up the client drawer. You can use categories just to give yourself some clarity when you're looking at all of your clients, who they are or what they are. Another area where that may be valuable is if you are in your reference drawer, and if you're like me, where you have several types of business materials, you may have a file here that is, let's see, contracts and agreements. You might have the category for consulting, and it may be, you know, a really huge file because I've got like 10 different kinds of forms, and then I might want to create another contract and agreement forms, and then have a category for that one that is related to webinars, although we don't have contracts and agreements for webinars, although I may have one as an alliance with the Monticello company. So that's how you can use that. All right, I'm looking to see if we have any other questions.
And just as input for the category section, we can also click on the category button and be able to select the category for which we are looking for. We can also print a report, like a file list report, and select the category on that report.
You know, I was looking for that. So if you hit on category, or hit on categories, here's our different categories. We can go to
show advanced options.
Go to report on where?
Here.
Oh, I think I know what you're doing. Under item list, the advanced options, there we go. Did you see what we just did? Thank you, Janet. As we can see, even though I've been working with the Paper Tiger since I think 2003, with the new version, things are just a little bit more slick, and everything I assumed we could do is still here, is that we just have a new advanced way of doing it. So we could print out a report of everything in the category of consulting, and we can then define which location, and you can click every single darn location if you think it's appropriate. And in the notes sections, we can include if there's notes in there, and then what we can do is generate a report, and you will see everything. And I didn't pick the right categories, so that's why that didn't work. But there are options. Sometimes we just need to drill a little bit deeper. As I was trying to keep this as a simple overview, sometimes it gets a little bit more complicated, but know that there are lots of options to help you be more productive with this. Again, we're about 5 minutes till, and it's really a quiet audience. We've got same amount of people that started on the call are still on there, and no one is typing in any questions. So I want to say that if there are questions that you have not heard addressed here, and you would like to have them addressed in a future webinar, please email them to either Janet or myself, and we will be happy to acknowledge them. And I guess that I could continue with some other questions that I have, or Janet, do you think we might need to close?
You know, Anne, one question that I was thinking about is how would you index books or CDs, either one of those? Would that be a quick thing that you might could do?
All right, that's great, because that was the next question I was actually kind of looking at. I had a client, and he called in a question saying, how would you inventory books? What we would do is we would go to our browser, and you would set up a location for books. I got all these darn tabs open. Okay, oops, back to this. Oops. How'd that happen? All right, okay, there we go, thank you. Okay, what we would do is we would go back to our database, and we are going to be looking at our sample task. That's the name of our database. And we are going to set up a new location called Books. So let's hit Books, New location, for books. Now, the person who asked this question said, okay, what do we do with all that? Say they've got 100 books. And I would say the books, that could be in the bookshelf, in the library, or we can define this as the library, or we can define it as a bookshelf. And the key is to describe where it is and how many there are. I would add this location. Go back to the location of books to open it up. And the item name would be, for instance, the name of the book. And say, for instance, we have the book and let's get a book that we've got, Law of Attraction. Law of Attraction, sorry for the typo. And then keywords, oh boy, sorry for the typo. The keywords might be The Secret. Keywords might be the name of the author, Life Made Simple, and then you just add it to the books. And then you'll have it listed as a book in your inventory list. And again, you'll have something that you can print out later of what is in your library. And one of the other neat things I always like to tell people about a library and why it's so fun to create one is people are always borrowing books. So what you can do is you can always edit that book and make a note in your keywords and set lent to Janet. You can put an action date in there, but I really don't want her to have it much more than a month. So we might give it an action date within a couple of weeks. And you're going to get a pop-up reminder that on February 26th you want to maybe give a call to Janet and say, can I have my book back? So you can use this really as, again, a tool to manage your information. All right. That's a brief overview on how to use different functionalities of the Paper Tiger. I think the questions that we were able to address today helped to be a little bit more of a reality of how people are using the Paper Tiger. I'm happy to answer any basic questions for helping you get things started. And if you feel that you have an individual situation that's a little bit more complex and you'd like to be more efficient about setting up your system, again, I'm more than happy to provide a 30-minute phone call with you to go over your particular case. Janet, I'm going to give it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Anne, you did a great job. We appreciate you so much. We want to thank you again for attending today's webinar. We have had an overwhelming response. And just to let you know, we do plan to post the recording on our website so that you can refer back to it whenever you need to. Please feel free to give us your feedback by emailing us anytime. Also, if we fail to answer any of your questions, because I'm not sure that we can see all of the questions under that questions section. We will capture those and be able to respond back to them. So please know that we will respond to them. And again, we appreciate you attending.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, Anne. Appreciate it. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye.